Live from Dunamis Church. This is Today at Dunamis. Lock your doors. Keep your windows closed. COVID is coming for you. Will we make it out alive? I'm your co-host, Ed, and let's find out with the host, Shaun ED.
Here we are today to talk life at Dunamis.
Hey everyone.
Well,
Did you like that intro?
I don't know what to think. Lock the door, run and hide. You know what I mean? So, first of all, it's nice to have you here, Ed.
Yes,
as
it's good to see you
co-host,
too.
and nice to have Erica with us on Switch.
Hey Erica.
Thank you for joining us. Not too long before baby is due. How long do we have?
11 weeks.
11 weeks.
11 weeks.
And then
Okay.
maternity leave and some other little breaks.
Well, technically 9 weeks till maternity leave.
Yes, and I want to give a shout out to Courtney and Nick. They had a little girl,
Yes.
was born this morning. And you know what's unusual about Nick and Courtney? I did their wedding
Oh, that's right.
in the middle of COVID when you couldn't have more than 5 people.
Yeah, that's right. It was just the five
Not
of
the
you.
middle, the beginning.
Oh, for you.
And now, what's a year later,
Yeah.
give or take, they have a baby born in
In lockdown.
lockdown COVID. So it's like keep it in the family, isn't it right?
Yeah,
So
keep it
comes in.
traditional.
So we were supposed to be doing part 2 of Amy Simple McPherson.
Yes.
But talking with Ed, we thought that it might be better just to postpone that for now.
Yes.
Purely because of this lockdown,
we're in, yeah.
and to talk. So we've got some things to talk about and sharing. But just I want to get straight into it straight away because we have our federal member for Ford,
Yes.
Mr. Bert Van Mennen. He's a good friend, and I've known him for a number of years. He's online with us, and it's just kind of him to be able to drop in. So, Mr. Bert Van Mennen, thank you very much for being online with us during this time.
Yes.
Hey, morning, Shaun. Morning, everybody.
And
Another thank you, Ed, for that rousing reception.
You're welcome, Bert.
yes, it'll be like you're in Canberra and the whole gallery's just performing and shouting out. So today's program is not about what's happening in Canberra. That would be another day. But the fact of the matter is that we just wanted to call on you because you are our local member federally, and just about this lockdown. First of all, did it come to you as a surprise on Monday when you heard about the lockdown?
Look, it did because we were generally going very well, and I think as a nation, we'd done a very good job. So to see that happen on Monday, I think everybody was shocked that was the course of action that was taken.
Do you think the course of action was called for, needed, exaggerated? Like, what's your feeling on that particular area?
Well, I think the difficulty is a double-edged sword. If we have a very significant community outbreak, much harsher restrictions could have been put in place across a far wider area of the state. So I think there's prudence while we've got the ability to do these short, sharp lockdowns and get control of the situation very quickly. I know they said in the past that they wouldn't do it again, but I think the reality of COVID, and particularly with that UK strain and its infectiousness, I think prudence determines that we do these things quickly, try and get control of it, and then we can open up again. So I think Queenslanders, by and large, have done a great job over the past sort of 24, 48 hours. So hopefully from 5 o'clock tomorrow, things can return to normal.
Just a couple of points on that. First of all is, how can a government or leadership declare we will not go down to lockdown again? I mean, how can they make that statement? That's like, how does the wind blow? Like, how do you make a statement, we will not be going down to lockdown again?
Look, I don't know how or why they made that statement. I think it was always desire that it didn't happen again, and there's a lot of time and effort and work going into try and make sure that happens. But the reality is we don't know with COVID what is going to happen. We can only give, sort of best estimate scenarios, and it's not until we get the vaccine rollout program complete, towards later in the year, that we'll really start to have a better control on the situation, I think.
That's an interesting statement on the vaccine rollout, and please correct me where I'm wrong, which I hope I am. So my understanding, well, I've heard prior the state government saying we're not getting enough COVID vaccines coming through from the federal. Then we find out that the federal government had given to Queensland over 100,000 vaccines, and only just over 50,000 had been distributed. Have you heard that to be true?
Yeah, that's correct, Shaun. And what we're doing with the vaccine rollout, we're supplying the vaccines to the state government at the level required to get, we're now in phase 1B, so people in that part of the rollout are vaccinated with their first shot, because remember, both vaccines both require 2 doses. And then as the time arrives for people to get their second lot of vaccine, then the state will be supplied with those necessary vaccines, whereas the state government's taken a different attitude, and they say, well, we don't trust you to deliver these vaccines, so we're going to withhold some of the first round vaccines for the second round. And that's not the way the rollout is designed, and it's not the way the vaccines are being released. The idea is to get them out to people, get people vaccinated as quickly as possible, and then when they're due for their second one, there'll be new batches of vaccine arriving for the government to administer. Now,
you take the central spot here is the Princess Alexandra Hospital, PA Hospital, and we're all concerned because it's in lockdown. But the origins there is with a doctor and a nurse who were not vaccinated, that had some sort of connection to the COVID cases there, and yet in that hospital were vaccinations that weren't given to these medical people.
Correct, Shaun, and it goes back to my earlier comment. The state government has made a very deliberate decision to run its vaccine rollout program differently from what was proposed, and withhold vaccines for the second round when that was not the way it was designed. It was designed to get those out, get people vaccinated, and then the next lot of vaccines for the second round of the vaccination will arrive and be delivered to state governments in time for that.
It just worries me. Now, my wife's mother, she's 95 years old in a retirement home. She got vaccinated a couple of weeks ago, which we were quite happy about, despite there'll be people out there who don't believe, but we're quite happy about that. But the fact of the matter is, you're talking about frontline people, and my understanding is there's an epidemic happening in Papua New Guinea where over half of those who are infected or in hospital here in Queensland is from Papua New Guinea. It almost seems Papua New Guinea is almost getting out of control in the latest stats I was just reading. And I know that the Cairns-based hospital, I'm not sure if the Townsville-based hospital, but they're almost to the point of having to shut down as well because of the amount of cases that came in from PNG. I just don't understand how our government is not getting the frontliners, like doctors and nurses, who are actually treating these people with this vaccine. It just doesn't seem to add up to me.
It doesn't make any sense to me either, Shaun, but I think that's a very good question for our local state members as to why that's occurring.
Yeah, I'd love to get a local state member to talk to us, but they're a bit hard to get, like a tooth of a hen, hen's teeth, so to speak. So thank goodness for the federal. But, I was reading some statistics, Bert, and you're federal, so you know, of Papua New Guinea. And I'm not sure of the population in New Guinea. It'd only be like 3 million or so, I think. But in Papua New Guinea, there is 5,620 total cases. 846 are recovered, 56 deaths. And to give you an example, there are only 5 cases in January, 124 in February. They said that from March the 1st to the 9th, there are 376 new cases, and they're expecting March, this is the last day today, to hit over 800 cases.
Yeah, the situation in PNG is very serious, and as a federal government, we've actually set a whole lot of resources up to PNG. I think we've sent, in the first lot of vaccine, we've sent up 8,500 vaccine doses for their critical frontline workers. We've also sent up a lot of PPE equipment, things like surgical masks, respirators, gowns, goggles, all of those sorts of things, hand sanitizer. So we're working very closely with the PNG government to provide them with the support that they need to get this outbreak up there under control. A lot of people probably wouldn't realise, but they don't have the health systems and processes in place that we're so fortunate to have here. But we're working very closely with them to help try and get that under control and get people treated that need to be treated.
I heard statistically a week or so ago that in New Guinea there is like 500 plus nurses and 400 plus doctors, of which between the doctors and the nurses, over half of them had been struck with COVID-19. Yeah,
look, I haven't seen those stats, Shaun, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's correct, because as I said, they just don't have the systems and processes in place that we have here, and we're spending a lot of time and effort and sending specialist people up there to help them deal with those and get those processes in place. But I haven't seen those stats, but I wouldn't discount them at all.
The other thing I read and saw was that I don't know if Queenslanders really understand how close Papua New Guinea is to our borders, especially the Torres Straits, etc., to where it's a canoe trip over, or even in some places at low tide, you could almost, not quite, but almost walk across. A little bit exaggeration there, but almost walk across. And that's where a lot of the COVID cases were, in that top area. I remember talking to folks from New Guinea last year, and they go like, oh, no, we've got nothing. And all of a sudden, it looks like that's where the infiltration is coming across, especially to Queensland, which would go all the way across. Would you not think it's a concern?
Yeah, well, that's why we've got in there so quickly to help them. I think the initial big outbreak was at the TaD mine, and it's gone from there. So, and I think that the nearest point is 3 kilometres between the border of Australia and the nearest island for PNG. So it's not very far at all, and so that I think that's the main outbreak is around TaD and being in the Western Province there. So it's very much our focus is helping them get that under control, as I said before.
I've got a Pastor Harry DeVries from Amendment Church asked, could I ask you when we might know when the Johnson & Johnson vaccine would come to Australia, if it will or when it will come?
I don't know. One of the things that is going to help us as we go forward is that we have the ability now to produce vaccines here in Australia. So they'll all be made in CSL's Melbourne plant, so that's the AstraZeneca one. So we'll have the capacity to produce about 1 million doses a week once that's fully up and running. So that's I think starts earlier this month or later give us the opportunity to be self-sufficient and provide for our own needs, and that's what our focus has been. So I'd have to check on the Johnson & Johnson one, but certainly the current situation with AstraZeneca being made here will make us being able to rely on our own resources and not rely on importing stuff from overseas.
Well, the EU will just confiscate ours anyhow, it seems like. So that's what happens there. So, and then you've got countries like the independent Ireland that's not getting anything. I was talking to pastors over there, and the EU are not supplying them.
Yeah, well, I understand why the EU is to a degree doing what they're doing, because they've got enormous problems over there across Europe, and we're in a very fortunate situation where we can manage our rollout because we've largely got coronavirus under control in the first place.
I mean, like, does the European government inform our government, hey, are we going to stop it, or they just do it? I mean, like, is there courtesies and respects that given, or they just do it?
Well, given that we're talking about the Europeans, they'd probably do it. But I'd be there are protocols in place for this, so I expect there's a large degree of cooperation and discussion between the various health bodies to make sure that everybody's aware of what's going on. And I know from discussions that I've had with Greg Hunt, they're regularly speaking with the European authorities about a range of matters. So I've got no doubt they keep us informed.
If we're going to be producing like 1 million vaccines a week, you said, and our population is, only like 25 odd million, would we then be expected to be supplying like in the Pacific, South Pacific, or the Pacific area, Asia? Like, is that what you'd be thinking that we'd be doing?
Well, our first priority is to get Australians vaccinated, but where we have the capacity, such as we're doing in PNG or in the Pacific Islands, we will provide vaccines to those countries and those communities to ensure that any outbreaks they have there are managed, and that's always been a large part of our focus more generally from an aid perspective, is how do we support our Pacific neighbours.
Would that include New Zealand?
I don't know. I think New Zealand is pretty much taking care of their own situation. I haven't heard any discussions in respect of doing anything with New Zealand in that manner. So I'm assuming they're sort of sorted for themselves.
I mean, they must be getting vaccines, because it's not a matter of saying we're a closed nation, because they won't be allowed to travel or do other things unless they have vaccines. So how did Australia get to be so fortunate to be able to make its own vaccines?
Well, that's been a huge benefit for us in being able to do that. And that was something we identified very early on in the piece that we needed to do to create that sovereign capacity.
Yeah. Now, I think one of the things too about the state government, and I think this is my opinion, that state governments, particularly the Labor state governments, which I'm going to include here, Western Australia, Victoria, and Queensland in particular, who seem to be very strong talking about their leadership and ability during this time. But I also believe there is a great dependency upon the generosity of the federal government, which was JobKeeper. Now, JobKeeper ceased midnight on Sunday. So to do a complete shutdown and everything else, the state governments have got to be a little bit reluctant, purely on the basis knowing about the expense and cost it's going to be and the repercussions towards them politically. Would you not think so?
Well, the consequence is Shaun, that the political outcomes are that they've been re-elected very successfully, particularly here in Queensland, by doing the things that they have done. So yes, people get frustrated and disappointed and annoyed at lockdowns and other things, but ultimately the people have voted that they'd rather endure those things and be safe than take the risk of open slather. And the election results over the last 6 months, both here in Queensland and more recently in WA, show that very clearly.
So someone asked, the vaccine will not eradicate COVID because it keeps mutating, okay?
Yep.
Now, the leading nations, again, this is just me, what I've researched, in regards to giving out the vaccinations. I think number one was Israel, and then must be pretty close behind number two, the United Kingdom, with the amount that's been dispersed. Now, Israel, who I believe is the leader in giving the vaccinations out, has had, in what I've understood, a pretty good stabilized effect in that nation through the release of the vaccines. Have you heard that to be true?
I believe so, but I haven't looked at their situation in any great degree of detail, and I know that from something else I read recently that despite the current suite of vaccines that are available, the Israelis are still doing a lot of research to identify other solutions. So they're also not just relying on the current availability of vaccines, but they're looking to develop other ways to treat coronavirus as well. And the Israelis generally have a pretty good track record of doing that sort of stuff. But you're right in your earlier comments that in relation to coronavirus, it's something we've got to learn to live with. Just like we get the flu vaccine every year, because the flu virus mutates, we're going to have the same thing with coronavirus, and we need to manage that and work with that.
Yeah, that's a good point. In the United Kingdom, there's some 60 million or so in the population, and they have been really in the forefront in having the vaccines. They've moved away from the EU, and yet in this particular area, they're really leading. They have seen deaths decline now, haven't they?
There has been a decline in deaths and also infection rates. Whilst my understanding is that a lot of the vaccinations have been one dose, so they've still got to get to a lot of the people, back to a lot of the people with the second dose, and that's the same for us here. A lot of people have had one dose, but they need to have a second one. But I think it'll be 6 to 12 months before we really start to see the full impact of the vaccination programs and how effective they are in the medium to longer term, because that is still up for debate as to how long the vaccine is effective for. We know with the flu one, as an example, we need to get it every year. So we just don't know yet from a longer term perspective how well it's going to work and whether you need to get more regular doses just to keep on top of it, and only time will tell.
I mean, you think of the Spanish flu, 1918, 1919, end of World War I. And if you take, for example, the United States was like 600,000 deaths, you say, well, that's a lot less, but the population was only around 5 million people compared to, not 5 million, probably around 50-something million people. I don't know if you guys can find out the population in America and 1918, but it's a lot smaller than 300 odd million. But the fact of the matter is, how do they get through it? I mean, how did they survive? Just a herd mentality? Like, what happened? So how did they get through that?
I mean, again, like with COVID, there's varying degrees of how people react to getting COVID-19. And, you know, some people will get very mild symptoms and it'll be fine. Others will get very severe symptoms and finish up in intensive care in hospital. So, you know, it would have been, I suspect, no different with the Spanish flu. The other, I suppose, part of it is that people today are much more mobile than they were back in 1918, 1919, 1920. So that has an impact today in terms of how quickly things can be spread. We live probably much more densely in a lot of parts of the world, so that also has an impact. But again, as I said, the important thing is that many people will have had COVID-19 but not had very bad symptoms, and their health is not overly at risk at all. And that's what we find with a lot of people. Until they go and get tested, they didn't even know they had it.
Interesting statistic. In 1918, in the United States, from the Spanish flu, some 600,000 died. The population of America at that point was 103 million. Today, America's population is just over 328 million. So if you work on 600,000 per 100 million, that would put America's death rate to be relative about 1.8, 1.5, 1.8, which obviously their death rate is, you know, just what's the death rate in America right now? 500,000 deaths. So you can see that's still under the 1918 epidemic per area. So it's really, even though our population travels around more, it's less devastating than what the Spanish flu was, believe it or not, statistically. And I noticed
that's a reflection of the fact that we have much better health systems today than we had back then too.
Yes. But then you combine it with the better health system, but also, as you mentioned, people were less traveling. They weren't getting around as much. I mean, flying was for the wealthy. It wasn't for the average person, like getting on a bus. So it is interesting.
Yeah, I don't think we were even flying back then. So I think the first passenger flights were in the 1950s.
No, I think 1918 in America they were doing flights, and But the issue is just talking about the effect. Is there any one nation? Well, I think Australia stands out pretty good. I can imagine there's people who be listening to us, United States and Ireland. I mean, Ireland was open for Christmas, and they've been down for lockdown now still in lockdown, and now talking about June, and now talking about to September. So it's huge, and they're on that 5 kilometre radius in there in Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, which is just terrible. You know, I was out today filling up my vehicle with fuel, and I went into obviously when I went into pay, I put on a face mask, and here's a lady for kid all running around, no mask, no nothing, and the other guy walked in. So it almost seems like the people here just like, you know, really don't care. It's just not happening. Have you noticed a bit more blasé?
Look, it has been, but I think the last few days when I've been out and about, on the occasion I've had to go out, people have been really good. I haven't noticed anybody not wearing face masks and that sort of stuff. So they've been doing the things that they've been asked to do, and I think that shows in the figures we've had overnight.
You must have been in a better part of the town than I was, because wherever I was, they were not wearing it. I felt like an oddball because I put it on. There was me and the teller with it on, and the others running around inside the store were not.
Yeah.
And so that's how it is. Now, what do you say to the naysayers? There's still the big one there, like COVID's a fake and wearing a mask is a fake. And I mean, I read all the time. I read off Christians, even Christian-type pastors who are posting things in that don't believe in the vaccine. What do you say? You're a Christian. What are you saying to these people? That they think if you believe in it and they don't, are they saying that you're promoting the conspiracy or you're being fooled by a conspiracy?
No, I think, last time I checked, I don't have a medical degree, or I'm not a doctor. And one of the things that makes our society function and operate is our trust in institutions and people. And I think we need to trust our doctors and our medical establishment that they know what they're doing. We've seen the impact of coronavirus, particularly on older people, particularly in Victoria where it got away. We had over 900 deaths just in Victoria alone. Now, for younger, fitter people, fair enough. But I read a comment online from somebody earlier in the week that had sort of had that attitude and has now been diagnosed with it, and they've gone, well, I was very wrong. It's much more serious than I thought it would be. And people do need to take it seriously, because it will lead to people dying if it's not taken seriously. And do those people want that to be their elderly parents and dying because they contracted coronavirus? And I would suggest, that they might want to reflect on that, or somebody else's elderly parents. So I take the medical advice and follow it, because, as I said, I'm not a doctor or a scientist, and I've got to trust and respect that those people know what they're doing.
Yeah, good answer. Well, thank you very much for coming online with us. I know you're pretty busy, and give our regards to all the family, and we're certainly holding in our prayers, especially when the day comes when you get back down to Canberra again with all the things happening there.
Yeah.
Have a very blessed and happy Easter.
5 or 6 weeks. Bless you, Shaun, to you and the whole team, and I'll look forward to catching up with you at the Easter services. But I hope everybody has a blessed Easter, and again, I think it's important we remember why we have Easter, and it's not for the chocolate bunnies and Easter eggs.
That's right, the reason for the time. That's right.
Yes.
God bless you. Thank you so much, Bert. Thank you.
See you, Bert.
Thanks, Shaun. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Bye.
Interesting. Talked a little bit longer than I expected, Ed.
Just a little bit, but that's a classic of TaD at Dunamis. We always do something unexpected.
Yeah. Well, we said let's just recap on. So last year we were in COVID, and you put together a little montage of some of the comical things we had. So why don't we just take it?
Hang on, I need like a minute to get it ready, Shaun.
Okay, so let me just first of all say what's happened. So
Yeah.
on Monday, it was announced in the morning that from 5 p.m. Monday until Thursday 5 p.m. There would be a lockdown.
Yes.
In the Greater Brisbane area. Why? I forgot to ask, but why are we including the Greater Brisbane? I don't know why.
Hey, I think don't you remember we're graded in Brisbane?
So why is it that 1 minute Brisbane doesn't want to recognise us, and then when there's problems, they want to pull us in with them? I don't understand that. If anybody from Brisbane is going to be traveling to spread it, they're going to be going to Gold Coast, not to Logan City, I don't think.
Sorry,
you know
Harry.
what I mean? Well, I mean, this is business here.
Yeah.
They're going down there for holidays. It's down in Harry's area, okay, not ours. All right. On Tuesday, the Premier announced that there were 10 new cases. 8 were local. 6 of those 8 were close contacts, and 2 were from overseas. And Wednesday, this morning, I was listening to her statement. There are 3 new cases. Now, that's great. 3 new cases, 2 local, 1 overseas. So that is really encouraging. And I can tell you that if it stays small like that tomorrow, there shouldn't be any continuation. But if we go into double figures, there'd be a chance of it going on. I know the Gold Coast is a little bit on edge because they're concerned there. But I also think over the border, New South Wales and Byron Bay. Do you not think so, Ed?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm ready to go with the video now.
So here's a little montage of what it was like last year on some of our programs. Go ahead, Ed.
Here we are tonight to speak life at Dunamis.
Are we glad to see you? And then we'd go back to someone's house and we'd have supper, just laugh, carry on till the early morning hours.
Or a fight.
So anyhow, there was a band of possums who'd become quite a problem with the local church. And similarly, they went to the Presbyterian church, and the Presbyterian leadership, eldership, called a meeting to decide what to do about the possum infestation. So after much prayer and consideration, they concluded that the possums were predestined by God to be there.
There was this lady who was like walking her 2 dogs without a leash in a public park. That's 2 times I've seen her do that. So if you know who you are, you don't know me, I know you, you're breaking the law. There's security cameras at that park.
Science fiction is sort of a side interest.
It's something that I've just loved to do all my life.
Why do you like science fiction?
Well,
The kingdom to come, that's what you're saying?
wait a minute. What's that, Scotty? I gotta go.
Where'd Shane go? He was just here.
He forgot his cup.
Yeah, he left his cup here. It's so rude.
Do you think, Ed, if I did this,
don't
there'd be
ask
a
me to put
picture?
photos
Could you
up.
put a picture up of his dumbbells in cement? Ed,
Yeah, what?
Ed,
What?
photos
What do you
in
want?
cement. I want them up.
You want a
there,
foot rub too? You want a back rub? Do you want me to go get your coffee?
1, 2, 1, 2. Come on, give him a hand.
But if you want to take it to the treadmill, this is it fast, all right? So we go 1,
sideways,
2,
let's go.
1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Come on, get on that treadmill.
Do that
Follow
Irish
me.
stand.
All right, get out of here.
What was that, Eric?
Ed the bed.
Ed the bed.
Yes, I
I was going to go, Ed has a big head, but I mean, I don't know about that over there. But I mean, it's been great being here, and thank you for these 4 weeks.
Oh, yes, it was good to reminisce, wasn't it?
I kind of missed that day.
Yeah, even looking back at the footage, I was kind of like, you know what? Even though that was very difficult to pull off each week, it was fun.
There's still a skit I want to do with you, Ed,
Yeah,
that we
I
didn't
know.
get to do. We had planned this skit.
Yeah.
Well, I had planned it, and Ed was coming around to it. I think I'd planned it 3-4 weeks in advance, but I finally got Ed to agree, and that was over.
It was over.
And, that was it. We had a lot of good guests. We did a lot of different programs and our Sunday programs.
Eschatology, faith in action.
Yeah, we did a whole thing on eschatology. I mean...
That was intense.
Speaking of eschatology and all that stuff, okay, I was reading the other week on people's Facebook page, right?
Yes.
And on their Facebook page, I read this particular thing. We are banning or no longer supporting Nike because Nike is now making Satan's shoes. Okay, you got the picture
yes,
of
here
the
it is.
satanic shoes.
Here
you
is
go.
the satanic shoe.
The satanic
now, the person you're
shoe.
looking at there is a rapper called Lil Nas X. He's the guy who did that Old Time Road song.
How does it go?
I'm gonna take my horse down
that
Old Time Road. I'm gonna ride till I can't no more. Got them horses in the back. And then it's like this
I
weird.
have never heard of that song.
It's like a weird country rap song.
That was Erica jumping in on that song.
Yeah. It's with all the young people. Sean.
Has he had any
All them
other
TikToks.
hits since
Oh,
then?
I don't know.
Okay.
I just know because that's just a song that blew up.
Now, so I've read all these Christians in America saying, we're not going to buy Nike, we're just going to Nike here. And then
Yes.
I said, well, I'm going to look into this. And I
Yes.
found out that Nike, or Nike, whatever
Nike,
you want to
yep.
use, is actually suing the company.
Ah.
They're suing MSCHF Product Studio, which must be related to
Yeah, because a lot of people, you were saying that they will get like a Nike shoe and then
Yes.
they'll like do their own print on
They
it. And
paint it,
They
do
paint
it.
it. And
Yeah.
this is what it is. This is
Customize it.
a custom shoe. Yeah.
Yeah. And these were Nike Air Max 97s.
Yes, yes.
So they were customized. So seemingly it's not uncommon for people to get a shoe,
Yeah, get it like a Nike shoe.
they customize
customize it and resell it.
and resell it.
Yeah.
So seemingly they sold, do you want to guess how many pairs?
666.
That's right. 666. 666.
I didn't even read the notes. I was just
pairs
guessing.
of shoes. Okay, and similarly, they had red ink with one drop of human blood. In the sole.
Yeah,
presumably. Allegedly. Yeah. And they sold them US dollars for $1,018 a pair. And they sold out in a couple of hours. Yeah.
Man, this guy, I tell you what, I might not agree with him religiously, but this guy knows how to make money.
Well, I prefer that you didn't agree with him because of God rather than religion.
Well, yeah.
You know what I mean? So.
Well, one of the things that stood out to me of this story, because I was watching it all yesterday, and there was this woman. Like, look, I don't like what this little Nas has to say about my faith. You know, and you can be over there and have his own opinion on it, and I'll be over here with my opinion. That's okay. But one of the things that really annoyed me with this was that there's this woman called Ashley Easter she blew up on Twitter commenting on this whole situation. And Erica, if you could put this up on the screen, she said, when you traumatize a whole generation and more of kids with the concept of a literal hell, something Jesus never preached, don't be surprised if they grow up realizing it was a control technique and then use the imagery to make a point in the art. Now, my issue with this is that she said something Jesus never preached, which...
She obviously doesn't read the Bible.
She doesn't read the Bible. I mean, I've got a scripture right here, Matthew 5:29. You're
going to put the scripture
I don't have
up?
the scripture up on the screen, sorry. If your right eye causes you sin, gouge it out and throw it away, for it is better that you lose a part of your body than your whole body to be thrown into hell, or in this case, Gehenna. Which,
thank you. You got the word right. Thank you.
So like when I saw that, it was like, oh, dude, like say what you want, but at least get your facts straight.
Well, yeah. And I'm glad you used that word because the English language uses a word called hell.
Hell, yeah.
Okay, which is from the German word hell, okay, which means to bury,
Bury.
put under the dirt,
Yes.
to rest, which is potatoes.
Yes.
But as you know, the English language is pretty poor.
Pretty poor, yep.
So, for example, when we talk about love,
Yes.
it uses the word love, okay, where we got agape,
philia,
philia, brotherly, store, which is a relationship, you know, brother, sister sort of thing,
Yep.
and eros, which is between a man and a woman,
Yeah,
etc. And the same thing is the word hell. So
Hell,
the word hell is not correct word.
Yes.
Okay, so in the Hebrew, we'd use the word
It's coming to me.
Sheol,
Sheol.
Sheol.
Sheol and Hades.
And Hades is Greek, which is in the New
Greek.
Testament.
Yep.
And Gehenna,
Gehenna.
which you've mentioned, which is in the Gospels.
Yep.
And then in 1 Peter, TaDis.
Yeah, TaDis, that's-
which is
yeah.
where Peter says that's where the devil and his angels will go,
Yeah.
which is separate from man.
Separate, yeah.
Now, when Jesus mentioned Gehenna, go ahead, Erica.
Isn't TARDIS a Doctor Who reference?
You know what? There's probably a lot of, but no, you'll find it in 1 Peter. Okay, you can Google it.
No, yes.
Feel free.
I'm joking.
Which is what is used in the Greek. Now, here's the issue.
Yeah.
When Jesus said Gehenna, do you know what Gehenna was or is?
It was like a burning pit, right?
Right,
Where
it's
they-
a literal place.
A literal place, yeah.
So it wasn't eternity.
Yeah.
Like when Jesus says Gehenna, he's
Gehenna.
talking about literally here now.
Yeah.
Okay, so Gehenna, back in the time of the kings, 1 Kings, 2 Kings, was a place where they would sacrifice under Baal and that children.
Yeah.
In the days of Jesus, okay, it was the place just outside of Jerusalem,
Yes.
where they would burn the animal sacrifices, dead bodies, criminals, and it would be a stench. It would stink.
yeah.
It would hurt your eyes, and smoke would be there 24/7. It would be burning.
Yes.
And today in Jerusalem, Gehenna is where there's all apartments and housing.
Oh.
Okay, so that's where it was. So
Yeah.
when Jesus referred to better for you to be in Gehenna,
Yeah.
because we read it through Western eyes,
Yeah.
this is always the problem with the Bible, we don't read it through Eastern eyes,
Yes.
okay? It was a literal place.
Yeah.
So it'd be like, we call the place down the road here hell on earth,
Yeah.
right? Meaning it's a place of torment, stink, stench. And that's what Jesus says, you're going to be like hell on earth going through it.
Yeah.
Now, the same thing happened when you remember Jesus says, and the gates of hell will not prevail. That word hell there is a Greek word, which is Hades, which is from
yeah.
the Greek mythology.
Yes.
And the gates of hell was a literal cave
Oh, yeah, the cave. Yes. Yes. I remember this.
in
Yes.
Philippi, all right, where the story was, especially for Greek, this was the entrance to hell, Hades. Okay,
Yep.
and right there was where, and from the Greek era time, Alexander the Great, they worshipped Pan, which was half man, half goat in that area.
Yes.
And then Herod had built a temple in that same area to Caesar to worship as a god.
Yes.
So good Jewish boys were told, don't go there. A, there is the gates of hell, the cave. B, okay, it's where Pan, the Greek god, was, okay, and C, Herod had built a temple to Caesar. So Jesus takes the disciples to Philippi,
Yes.
where Mama said not to go. And remember, the word is not hell, but it's Hades,
Hades,
which is
yeah.
Greek, okay? And he says, the gates of hell, the gates of Hades, this place, will not prevail. He's trying to tell them to overcome their fears and not be scared of these things.
Yes.
So the problem is so many times in our interpretation of the English language is we get the wording wrong and we throw it all in. But so this fella is a product of, I understand, religious persecution.
Yeah, he would have had it. From how he's talked about.
Well,
he
Erica
grew
had
up.
information on the story.
Yeah.
What was that, Erica?
Okay.
Oh,
Sorry, so I can't listen to myself while I talk.
she's
You're
not used to it.
on.
yet.
So my understanding is that that guy who made the shoes, he was homosexual and or is, but when he was younger, and he received a lot of flack from the religious community, which gave him a negative experience that he's like rebelling against now.
Yeah.
Like getting even.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing is that I always laugh because of our eschatology.
Yes.
And then what happens because the eschatology, I mean, how many times during this COVID was it the end of the world? And
Wasn't it? I think about 4 times it's supposed to happen.
I think the same people who've been pushing the anti-vaccine and then the anti-everything else are the same people who last year were promoting it's the end of the world and everything else.
They really want it to end.
They really want to end, don't they? And of course, the number 666.
Yeah.
In the earlier manuscripts before this, it was 616.
Yes.
So all they got to do is go look at their Bibles and do research. So
Yeah.
what they have in Revelation 13 as 666.
Yes.
The earlier manuscript through the script they had before this Septuagint, the earlier one, or that's not Septuagint, that's the old,
Yeah.
but the Greek scripts, okay, is 616.
Yes.
Okay, and the issue is they would use numbers for letters,
Ah,
right?
yeah.
And that add up. Well, add up to the word Nero, because Nero is called the beast.
Yes.
Okay, and during this time, okay, Nero was the one who brought great hardship and pain and killing the Christians.
Yeah.
And of course, 666, if you want to use that word, okay, is meant to be in opposition of 777. 777 is triple perfection. 7 is perfection.
Yes.
777 is triple perfection. And that's what happened in that particular area. So that in itself is quite interesting.
Yes, I always find it funny when people see things like this and they get all like massively reacted, and it's like, just don't let it affect you. Like, I'm not gonna get this shoe. Hey, if he wants to do all this devilish type, hellish, demonic things, let him do it. He's gonna have to reap the consequences of that. I'm not buying this shoe. I don't care. I don't wear Nikes. I don't wear a brand. I just wear a shoe to protect my foot.
What shoe do you wear?
Okay, I'm wearing an Asics, very old Asics.
Okay. I wear Skechers. I'm a bit old now, and Skechers seem to help me better on my joints. What shoe do you wear,
Erica?
Sneaker do you wear?
I currently have on Reebok, but my lifting shoes are Noble.
No,
But I also like Birkenstocks and Crocs,
They can't be
etc.,
comfortable,
etc., etc.
I like blue steel for my steel caps.
All right, I'm going to move on. Okay. What
now.
I'm trying to do by bringing this subject up was not so much about this troubled man and his areas of making some sort of eschatology statement, which is confusing.
Yes.
But my statement was how quick Christians are in to judge. I mean,
Yes.
if you have a problem or need, God help you with the religious, because they're going to burn you and throw you out. You know what I'm saying? So, like, not that Nike's any Christian, but also quick they're ready to just throw them out and get rid of them.
Yeah, get rid of them.
It was a real tragedy.
Yeah.
A real tragedy. So, it happens. And, to me, that's what really is the great sadness in the whole picture. Don't you think?
Yeah, just for me, it's just something to laugh at. Like, who cares? It's just a shoe.
Yeah, it is a shoe,
It's just a shoe.
And,
Don't worry about it. Forget about it.
forget about it. So tell me your idea on this.
My idea on this shoe, I mean, look, he I think one thing you also have to remember of all these type of things is oldest outrage he was able to create. He was able to sell out of 666 shoes that cost over $1,000 each. This guy made so much money out of just annoying a very few amount of Christians who just got all angry. Look, in the end, this guy just wanted to make money. He made his money. I can't be angry because we live in a capitalist society. Like I can't be angry. I mean, I'm more angry at capitalism than this guy. Like I'm not affected by this guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think sometimes we get too caught up with these things, and we're too quick to make a judgment in the area. So, and for this guy, I feel like he needs to experience God.
Yeah. Amen.
I mean, I don't see Jesus being worried about somebody saying they acknowledge the devil,
Making a red shoe.
and they quote the script on the shoe or something. They have something on there, like Luke 3:8. He fell. I saw him, or some scripture where he fell from heaven and all that sort of stuff.
Luke 10:18.
Luke 10:18 fell from heaven.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I just find that, most intriguing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Really, really intriguing to say the least. So, but God's bigger, and we as
God's
Christians
bigger.
have got to
Yeah.
stop being so scared of these times in which we're living in.
Thin-skinned. Yeah.
And no, I think that there's a genuine fear
Yeah.
of what we would call the end time.
Yes.
And I believe that people say no until something comes up. So you get some sort of provoker like this person trying to sell stuff by putting a drop of blood
Yeah.
and calling it Satan's shoes
Yeah.
and using 666. All of a sudden, Christians, look, let me put it this way. I remember I was in Tegucigalpa in Honduras, and with a team when I was in America, and we had all these Bibles donated.
Yes.
And we went to the prisons there, or one big prison in the center. And in those prisons, there's two walls. The outer wall was by the security, and the inner wall was by their own inmates. They controlled it, if you wanted food to be brought in. So we bring in Bibles, right? Now, what did I do with the Bibles? I had a couple Bibles, expensive Bibles, made out of tissue paper. Bad news. Because they tear the tissue paper out and they roll their own cigarettes and smoke. So we only just use normal paper, so it just burns too quick.
Yes.
But here's the here's the situation right now, and it's the whole key, and so they'll tear it out and smoke it. But the issue is, did I get upset? Do I get angry? No, because that's ink and paper. The word of God is a living word. Exactly. That's what I have there. So that's what comes about. So how do you feel about over this COVID situation?
This was the first time I wasn't worried or panicked. And I think it was because of a piece of advice that you shared, which was you got to attack your free pieces of your flesh, your mind, and your spirit, I think it was. And you got to discipline yourself in dealing with them. That as soon as the news was announced, I was like, okay, I'm still going to mow the lawn. I'm still going to mow the lawn. I'm still going to keep reading my word. I'm not suddenly going to go into a panic and start researching because you latest updates. I mean, God bless Josiah. He was keeping us in the know, so I didn't have to really look too far. And, just been reading, been going on walks, going to the gym, been reading some good Christian books. And it's just been helping. It's the first time I haven't felt so worried. Like, what's going to happen?
How did you feel, Erica?
I got my garlic planted yesterday in my garden.
Woo!
Woo!
You're funny. I don't think there's been that strong of a fear in the area there. I just looking forward to see what's going to happen in the time to come. Don't you think? And,
yes.
And that's what happens overall. And I think what I always do, what I try to do, is I try to look at history and see what exactly is happening. You know what I mean, in the area. So when you think historically, what do you think is a guideline, Ed, for you to bring you through this time?
I look at swine flu. I mean, we got through swine flu. That I don't know how much that affected us, but it seems that we get through these disasters really well. It's more of a a war in your mind to get through this type of stuff more than like a physical or like, you know, that kind of thing. Like I don't know how to word it, Shaun. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm just feeling a lot better than last time.
Well, I mean, for me, like I mentioned to Bert, was that if we go back to 1918,
Yes.
and because we're talking about Amy Simple McPherson.
Ah, yes.
So you go back to 1918, okay? And if I was to read to you part of the story from her, which we'll get into like next week, but listen to this for a moment, and because I think it's really quite worthwhile.
Yes.
And it says here, and we'll go into this more so next week, but it says here, this is a headline, Sister Amy faces the flu pandemic of 1918. It goes on to say, the great flu pandemic of 1918, during which more than 600,000 people died in the US alone. Remember, we're talking about 103 million people versus 328 million.
Yep.
So if you were to multiply the 600,000, because per 100 million by 3, it's 180 million compared to 500,000.
Yes.
So even though Bert said, I understand that, well, didn't have the medical, well, they weren't traveling as much.
Yeah,
And it's
exactly.
still outbreak, but it's the war. So that would be equivalent to 1.8 million. So you take that in retrospect to only 500,000, you can see a difference here. And I think we've got to look back sometimes to see how far we'd advance.
Yes.
I mean, Erica, just Google how many Australians died in the Spanish flu 1918. I think it was only like, 50,000. I think something like that one. And anyhow, it says the epidemic was raging. Newspapers revealed that scores of dead laid under blankets and morgue floors for days, and there are not enough coffins. But it says, but during this time, 1918, how many people did it say there died? Did you get that one?
15,000.
15,000. So 15,000 died in 1919. And I think the population of Australia was, 5 million, was it? What's the population of Australia in 1980, 1990? So you just do it by maths and multiply percentages. You know what I mean? So 15,000 died. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
What was it? 5 million.
About 5 million, yeah.
5 million. So you multiply that by 5.
Oh, I'm not good with maths.
Well, 15,000. So 50, 65, 20, 75,000.
Yeah.
So they'd be equal to 75,000. How many people died in Australia due to this pandemic? 1,000 and something?
About 909.
Let's say 1,000.
Yeah.
So there was 15,000 died in 1918, 1919 Spanish flu. Australia had a population of 15 million.
Yeah.
If we were to make it equivalent to ours being 25 million,
Yep.
okay, multiplied by 5, you're talking about 70,000 to equal.
Yes.
To give you proportions.
Yeah.
So same as America, if you were to multiply that from the Spanish flu outbreak, okay, you're talking about 600,000 multiplied by 3 is 1.8 million compared to 500,000. If you want to get the feel of how bad it is, I'm saying
Yes.
that. If you want to feel how bad it was, that's what it was.
Yes.
Now, you say, okay, well, the vaccines, mutates. Yeah, the
Yeah.
flu mutates.
Flu mutates,
But
yep.
the thing is, it still took the edge and it still gave us the advantage of the area. So that's what happened.
Yeah, and that's what I was even thinking about when you were talking to Bert. I was thinking, I wonder if we ever look because we're going to reflect at some point in a year or two about how the news dealt with COVID. And I wonder if we'll ever look back and think, man, we really shouldn't have said this was a pandemic, but this was just a season's flu.
I think it's a pandemic because it's all around the world.
Yeah.
But I go back to Amy, and she was holding her meetings.
Yeah.
Unprecedented crowds.
Yes.
And it was moving. And she says in her own areas that as she's having meetings, there were ambulances and hearses driving past the doors of the church.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And it was just incredible. But she said she got sick with the flu, so much so that she staggered back home, and her daughter was so sick she was going to die. And Amy was about to pass out from the flu.
Yes.
And then she noticed her daughter had almost gone into a little coma. And Amy cried out for her daughter, Roberta, saying, Lord, please don't take her. So now she had a vision. She got healed. Her daughter was healed. She was healed, and she came through it. But it's just a great example of reading about how other people handle it. See, this is where I'm a bit different, perhaps.
Yes.
Is I like to... I believe that history is a great teacher
Yeah.
for today.
Yes.
And if I don't learn from the past, I will
Repeat.
repeat the past.
Yep.
So I go back and I read about it.
Yes.
So that it gives me a better understanding to handle it. So Amy was still functioning and doing it. People were dying, and but she preached the word. It came into her home.
Yes.
All right. And it was a very real thing, a very real thing. Now, she's a faith healer in all those areas, but she was still supportive of vaccine and help in all the areas. So, you know, here's a bit of the irony in the whole situation. So, you know, like Bert says, I'm not a doctor, but neither are you, who's probably judging me.
Yeah.
But the fact was, I read this on Google. Well, I got this directly from these other people. So, I mean,
doctor.
you can call what you want.
Yes.
But I even read to one guy who's a pastor, though he has no church, saying that this is a hoax. Well, I believe these people, you know, I don't want to sound rude, okay? But, I mean, it's almost like if their brain was dynamite, you know, they have no problems about blowing out their ears because they're not thinking clearly. And I don't mean to sound so demeaning, and I apologize in that area, but it really does concern me when we see how strong this is and that we need to be together.
Yes.
And what really concerns me is our witness as Christians.
Yes.
We need to be a witness at this time. So like when this guy who's doing crazy about Nike shoes, instead of us being a witness to reach out, we're so angry saying, I'm going to ban Nike. I mean, I really wonder if we realize how deep our witness is not.
Yes.
And during this COVID, it's our witness.
Exactly.
See, during this COVID, a lot of times I don't want to be around certain Christians because they're all arguing about a vaccine or it's not real. They're just a bunch of just silly people.
Negative Nancy's.
I want to be around the lost world and share them hope in Jesus and to sound sensible.
Yep.
You know, I got a neighbor who just lost her husband. I'm trying to minister there. I got another neighbor who belongs to a different religious group trying to share there. I got another neighbor. I'm trying to share different people about Christ.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And I got Christians who want to fight if I should be jabbed or not fight. I wonder how many people they share Jesus to, how many in the Lord. So, you know, and Amy Simon McPherson was out there preaching the word and sharing it. You know, she's a controversial woman. We'll be sharing about next week.
Yes.
But this is right in the pandemic of the Spanish flu on the back of the end of the World War I, 1918. That's how it spread around.
Yep.
And there's so much we can do. Well, time is gone and we got to finish off. But I just want to encourage you, first of all, our brothers and sisters in Papua New Guinea, because I know they do listen to us. I want to tell you that we are thinking of you and praying God's hand and protection upon you. Those who are in Bougainville, those who are across New Guinea, we're praying God's hand and grace. At the same time, we're praying also that tomorrow should bring good news.
Good news, yes.
As long as it's down this area, that we will have good news and that we will see something happen, that we can have things running.